But I think the development of full artificial intelligence would spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
It was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
So you said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1. 1, 6, 3, 2, 1.
Media doesn't have your best interest in mind. The government is self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio. Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Good evening and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and hello to all of you who may also have troubled minds. What's going on, guys? It is Thursday night, which is one of the nights we get together and talk about all the things we're not allowed to talk about. We do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific. What are those things, you may wonder? Aliens, conspiracy, the paranormal, the government, academia, the 24-hour news cycle, propaganda, and the general feeling that we live in the upside down. Got another doozy for you tonight. Per usual, we're getting together talking about weird stuff, right? Beyond weird. I think there's it's just an interesting place, this universe, because the more you look into some things and the oddities and all the rest of the, let's say, cosmic shenanigans that's going on out there, we don't seem to really know the secrets of this universe, do we? And not only that, there's the dream universe. Is that connected? We've got the multiverse, we've got the omniverse, we've got the metaverse, we got all kinds of things. What about the dream layers of Inception? I mean, things get weird when you start thinking about what the possibilities may actually be and what consciousness is and all the rest of this. It is a doozy. It's a doozy. I do love the mysteries. I do love the ideas that maybe, just maybe, some of this stuff could be true somewhere out there. And maybe it's not here. Maybe it's in an alternate dimension for all I know. But yeah, we got some pretty wild stuff here coming up tonight, because we haven't talked about this one yet, but I'm doing some more keyword research, trying to get some more marketing stuff for Troubled Minds, doing my leaning on my marketing know-how a little bit to kind of look at keywords and whatnot for Google searches and YouTube searches and things like this. And this term came up, and it's not one I've actually heard. It's an individual by the name of Dorothy Eady, E-A-D-Y. You ever heard of her? We're going to get to her tonight, because Yeah, and a little bit of maybe reincarnation, a little bit of the Savant Syndrome, a little bit of epigenetics. There's a lot of stuff going on with this, and we're going to get to all that tonight because, of course, like I always say, if we don't, who's going to? There's so many like great shows out there that are just talking to UFOs over and over and over again. Drives me nuts. I'd rather consider other things as well. UFOs are part of it, and lots of fun and lots of great things happening in the UFO world, but yeah, there's some interesting things going on outside of the UFO world, and that's really our purview here. We're kind of not really the UFO guys. We're the all the things people, and that's Troubled Minds fam. And thanks for being part of this. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. You know the way this goes. We're doing this live to include you. This is no declaration of truth. This is discussing some ideas about the universe, like I just said, and maybe it's true. Drinking the maybe juice is what we call that. We've sort of branded it that, the drinking the maybe juice, but it's to paraphrase what that means is it is the mark of an educated mind to consider a thought without accepting it. And that's what all this is about. Just getting together and talking about this stuff and seeing if maybe there is a shred of truth here. I don't know. I'm not that arbiter of anybody's truth, so there we go. We're doing it to include you. We're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, Twitter, and Twitch. We're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, which is digital radio, and I'm reading the chat in all those places. So if you want to include your ideas into the show, just type in the chat, and I'm trying to kind of just be interactive with this entire process and situation and everything else. And yeah, there we go. There's that. If you want to call into the show, you can dial up at 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Phone. It's right there. Phone number's right there on the actual screen on the stream. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. And troubledminds.org is the official website. You can find the phone number and the Discord link there, and come join the Discord. Come meet all these amazing people that are part of this whole situation, and myself included. I'm most active on Discord as far as social media goes, so come say hi. Troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link. Discord, of course, chat client, voice client, completely free if you have an internet connection, and it's just a way to get together and share ideas and be cool to each other, and that's really it. Let's see. We got that. We're doing those things. We're also on digital radio, the Fringe FM. What that means is you can hear us on the Paranormal app. You can hear us on TalkStream Live. You can hear us on the Fringe website at fringe.fm, right? Which is pretty awesome. So please help the Fringe. Help me help the Fringe, and they've been very good to me, and lots of good things happening over there. So there's that. You can help the Fringe by joining the Discord there as well. Go to fringe.fm/chat. It'll give you a direct invite to the Discord room. I'm watching the chat there as well. And the other way is to download the Fringe app. You can find that at your wherever you get your apps for your phone or your tablets, whatever you're using out there. You can find it Apple or Android app stores. It is also completely free. Look at all the free stuff. Free live radio. Free. Download the Fringe app. It's the best way, the easiest way to listen to Troubled Minds. Just smash the play button. 7 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Thursday. You get us, you get me, you get these conversations, and there you go. Easy as that. And with the Fringe app, it's cool too. They have on-demand stuff on there. You can do shout-outs. There's like I said, on demand, but you also get the other amazing programming that happens on Fringe FM. There we go. All right. Let's get started. This is a weird one, right? Like I was saying, this is the curious tale of one Dorothy Eady, Eady. And if you've never heard of her, it's a wild tale. It's a wild tale. So we're going to get to before we get to Dorothy Eady, we'll start with the Savant Syndrome. Okay, we're going to start with that because it's a wild thing that we've talked about this in the past. How people just sort of can have traumatic brain injuries and just start to learn new skills, like sort of unlock, I don't know, like a next level or something. It's pretty wild. So yeah, we got what's up? Robert says Dorothy Eady was the most credible example that past lives are real. And yeah, that's a doozy. We're gonna get to that. But here we go. This is from Reader's Digest, and yeah, you gotta love Reader's Digest. Old school, going back old school. But listen to this: how traumatic brain injuries can unleash extraordinary hidden talents. In rare cases, victims of severe head injuries can develop remarkable creative talents they never previously had. Is there a genius lurking in each of us? And to read just a little bit from this, Derek Amato stood above the shallow end of the swimming pool and called for his buddy in the jacuzzi to toss him the football. Then he launched himself through the air head first, arms outstretched. The tips of Amato's fingers brushed the pigskin, and he splashed through the water just before his head slammed into the pool's concrete floor. He pushed to the surface, clapping his hands to his head, convinced that the water streaming down his cheeks was blood gushing from his ears. At the edge of the pool, Amato collapsed into the arms of his friends, Bill Patterson and Rick Sturm. It was 2006, and the 39-year-old sales trainer was visiting his hometown of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, from Denver, Colorado, where he lived. Amato's mother rushed him to the emergency room, where the doctors diagnosed a severe concussion. It would be weeks before the full impact of Amato's head trauma became apparent. 35% hearing loss in one ear, headaches, memory loss, but the most dramatic consequence appeared just 5 days after his accident. Amato woke feeling hazy, and after near continuous sleep, and headed over to Sturm's house, and the two pals chatted. Amato spotted an electric keyboard. Without thinking, he rose from his chair and sat in front of it. He had never played the piano. He'd never had the slightest inclination to even do so. Now, his fingers seemed to find the keys by instinct, and to his astonishment, a ripple across them. His right hand started low, climbing in lyrical chains of triads, skipping across melodic intervals and arpeggios, landing on the high notes and then starting low again and building back up. His left hand followed close behind, laying down bass, picking out harmony. Amato sped up, slowed down, let pensive tones hang in the air, and resolved them into rich chords as if he had been playing for years. When Amato finally looked up, Sturm's eyes were filled with tears. And this is not just one. This is one example, but there are other examples of this. It's called Savant Syndrome, okay? And this has happened to not just this individual. Many other times there are situations where people get some sort of traumatic head injury, and they just wake up and they have an accent, like a British accent or something. Or they'll just start speaking in a language that they never knew. Like there's other instances. There's links in the description down below. You guys can check some of this stuff out. But instances of young people that never studied Spanish, but having a traumatic concussion at a sports event or something, and then waking up and being able to speak fluent Spanish. So there's some questions here, right? There's some pretty wild stuff, because we're going to get into Dorothy Eady tonight, and she had a similar instance, a near-death experience. She hit her head, and they actually considered her dead. They said that they laid her down, and she was pronounced dead. And they went to get the doctor to cart her out, and the rest of this. And it was going to be funeral type stuff. But then by the time they got back, getting everything prepared, they came to take the body away. She was awake, and she was sitting up on her bed and playing. And so, but her life changed. Things changed with Dorothy Eady. So we're going to get to that story tonight. So I got some questions before we do. All right, I got some questions, and it goes like this. Number one, this Savant Syndrome, okay? If we hit our heads in a traumatic fashion, all right, and it has the ability to unlock, let's say, that inner genius, what is actually sort of lurking in our head? What else can we unlock, okay? Meaning that some people have said languages. In this case, let's say some people have been mathematical savants after they had some sort of serious head trauma, like severe concussions, things like this. Other people have become musical geniuses, where before, or even fantastic artists, visual artists, painters or sculptors or all kinds of stuff. There's a whole list of this stuff that's happened, and it is rare. It is actually rare. However, this stuff is real. This stuff actually happens, and so it's odd. It's an odd thing, let's say. It's an oddity for sure. But the question I have is, okay, so number one, what else is lurking inside of our brain that we don't know? That's the first question, okay? The second question is, how deep does this Savant Syndrome go? Is it possible that it is some sort of cheat code to maybe not just unlock the hidden genius within us, but let's say it can also unlock whatever barrier there is to a past life, if you know what I'm saying. And we're going to get to that with the story of Dorothy Eady tonight. But it's pretty wild, these things, when you start digging into that it's real. It's a real phenomenon. This is not something that's, some woo-woo made-up madness. It's a real thing. Traumatic head injuries, in rare cases, do cause people to sort of learn or almost spontaneously adapt new skills at expert levels. It's crazy stuff, right? But except it's not. It's real. So how deep does this go? How deep does the rabbit hole go? Is it possible that maybe you can even peek into the past, into a past life by doing all the rest of this and kind of having that? What's up, Don in the chat says, sheesh, all I got was memory loss. Yeah, right. And that's the thing. So before I think we need a disclaimer there, just so people don't go start hitting their heads randomly to try and wake up the inner genius. Don't do that. Okay, it is super rare. Science doesn't really understand why this happens or even how it happens, and so that's what we're talking about tonight. That's what we're doing. What are your thoughts on this? I'd love to hear it. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. And so let's see. We started there. Here's just a couple. We'll do a couple of the acquired Savant Syndrome, okay? And here we go. So traumatic brain injuries, which can result from a mild concussion to permanent brain damage or even death, frequently result in substantial long-term social and cognitive effects. Victims are often left to deal with a completely new normal, full of serious changes and challenges. Other times, the brain responds to trauma in spectacular ways, resulting in talents the injured person never before expressed. All right, there we go. Imagine a 10-year-old boy seriously injured when he is hit in the head with a baseball and knocked unconscious. Rather than experiencing significant difficulty with speech or memory, he is suddenly able to compose brilliant scores on the piano, which we just learned with that other guy, right? This is called acquired savant syndrome, often referred to as a prodigious savant or accidental genius. And hey, I want to be an accidental genius. I just don't want to have to hit my head to do it, right? But so pretty wild stuff here. Let's go to this list, and we'll read some of this list. This is from Listverse, but here's another one. We got Tommy Mchugh, right? And here's just a couple examples before we get to Dorothy Eady. We're definitely going to get into that story tonight because this gets even more weird. But here we go. Let's start with Tommy Mchugh. For most of his life, Tommy Mchugh was a con artist, criminal, and drug addict. But at the age of 51, something unexpected nearly killed him. He had a brain hemorrhage. With both sides of his brain bleeding, he underwent a tense surgery, and it was hours before anybody was sure he'd survive. In the end, he made it, but with this strange side effect. He began to write poetry. It became compulsive for him. As he put it, quote, "The more I wrote, the more I wanted to write. It was like a drug." But soon the drive to rhyme gave way to an even more bizarre obsession. For the next several years, Mchugh spent nearly every waking moment painting. For up to 19 hours a day, he painted every surface in front of him. When he couldn't afford canvas, he painted the walls, ceiling, and floors of his home. According to a neuroscientist who has studied Mchugh, the brain hemorrhage flooded his frontal lobe with blood, which is responsible for creativity. Somehow this switched off a natural inhibition that keeps this section from operating in the background of most people, leaving it on full throttle constantly. Mchugh has described what he sees as endless corridors. When he paints, he's capturing a snapshot of that mental picture. And there's, like I said, there's case after case after case after case of this type of stuff. And it's brain trauma is what this is. It's just super bizarre. So back to the questions, right? What kind of secrets are lurking in our brains? It just seems to me that we've talked about this in the past of, maybe not superpowers, things like this, but, maybe there's this just, I don't know, like magician, this genius, this combination of all things just hiding within us. And I think the amazing part about these stories are that if you figure out how to unlock this, right? If it's a situation like in this guy's case, the latest case we just read there, it was like a rush of blood to his frontal lobe, and so it almost sort of like almost supercharged, right? That part of his brain kind of unlocked it. Instead of using it sparingly, it was just an overdrive. And so imagine if we could do something like this with our brains and just unlock it. That becomes, well, how deep does the rabbit hole go? Could it break down barriers, not just, let's say, learned and unlearned, let's say maybe things that we never considered at all, maybe even have been of interest to us, like, me. I never decided to just go start painting things. I've been a terrible visual artist. I can't barely draw anything. I mean, I have fun doing it, but it's not one of those like talents that I've had, right? Or even interest to like become good at it. So, but of course, everybody to each their own. And I think that's the interesting part about this, is if your interest isn't necessarily what unlocks, it makes you wonder what kind of other latent skills are kind of just chilling inside the brain, waiting for it to kind of open up. But what do you guys know about this? So again, it is called Acquired Savant Syndrome. Acquired Savant Syndrome, and it is disturbing because it does happen from trauma, right? We've talked about trauma in the past as part of a MK Ultra type stuff, where trauma will help you reprogram the brain for control mechanisms, for all kinds of different things, right? And so in that case, there's control, but then this other trauma can unlock, well, the brain. Maybe it is the cheat code for the brain. And that's the weirdness. So what do they do? How do we figure this out? How deep does the rabbit hole go? And yeah, I agree. It is interesting as hell. But we're going to get to another one too, where it gets even more weird with this Dorothy Eady. All right. So again, we'll start with her story and just tease this into the bottom of the hour here. But she did this, Dorothy Eady, right? You guys may have heard of her as Omm Sety. Ommsety, okay? And let's see, here we go. It starts like this, right? She was, let's see, automatic writing. She was doing all kinds of stuff. Here we go. Someone say a miracle occurred. So she was born in 1904 near London, England. Her life began as that of any normal child. That is until the age of 3, when she suffered a terrible fall down the stairs and was pronounced dead. All right. Some would say a miracle occurred that day because Dorothy regained consciousness and within an hour was able to sit up in her bed. But Dorothy was no longer the same girl who fell down those stairs, as her parents would soon discover. It was at the British Museum in 1908 when Mr. and Mrs. Eady first noticed Dorothy's strange behavior. Instead of expecting her child to be bored and restless, Dorothy became obsessed with the Egyptian galleries. As soon as Dorothy gazed upon the Egyptian artifacts, she began kissing the feet of the statues. She sat down at the foot of a mummy enclosed in a glass case and refused to separate from it. After her mother attempted to pick her up, Dorothy was quoted as saying, "Leave me here. These are my people." And of course, this gets even more weird because basically, the long story short of this, and we'll get into some more details that are very, very head-scratching here, she claims to have somehow been woken up to a past life, of not just a past life in terms of, 100 years ago. She's talking about living back in the time of the Pharaohs, living back and remembering not just some interesting things as far as, let's say, her past life, but knowing individuals that, oddly enough, she shouldn't or wouldn't. She just shouldn't know these things, I guess. And so it gets weird. So we're going to get into that story tonight. But so the questions are this, right? Like I said, this acquired savant syndrome. How deep does it go? It seems to be a cheat code for the brain, but what else are we hiding deep in the recesses of our gray matter? Love to hear your thoughts on this, and we're going to get to Dorothy Eady and ancient Egypt, and of course the Pharaohs among us. 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More The Timeless Savant, Pharaohs among us, and your calls when we return. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we are streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, and Twitter, and we are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Oh yeah, and Twitch. Don't forget about Twitch. Don't forget that little guy. And tonight we're talking about acquired Savant Syndrome. Now, some people have taken head trauma and turned it into genius. It is super rare, but it does happen. And so the question becomes, what is hiding between our ears? There seems to be the normal human function, and then there seems to be, on top of that, an even more, let's say, compelling and deep-seated knowledge that we cannot access normally. And of course, when you look at some of these things, again, people with head trauma learning to become great artists or great musicians or great mathematicians, or even some people claiming that they're unlocking a barrier to memory of a past life. So we'll get into some of that tonight in the story of Dorothy Eady. And if you've never heard this, it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild story. And so there we go. So love to hear your thoughts on this. What are we hiding in our brain? What's going on with this? How come it takes some sort of trauma to unlock, let's say, a latent genius that's just chilling in our head? And how deep does it go when we're talking maybe epigenetics and maybe some past life memory that's built into our DNA? Is it possible to really remember past lives like Dorothy Eady? We're going to get to her and her continued story. And there's some pretty compelling stuff with her because she, again, like we said when we started there just before the break, 3 years old, she fell down the stairs, she hit her head, she was pronounced dead. They came to really just pick her body up and take her off to the morgue. And when they went up to her room, because they took her back up the stairs and laid her down and all the rest of that, they found that she was sitting on her bed and playing. She was awake, she was up, and everything seemed to be fine. But she had changed. Something in her had changed, and they found out when they took her to an Egyptian museum, and she suddenly was drawn to these Egyptian statues and the hieroglyphs, and she started exhibiting some interesting knowledge that she shouldn't know. And of course, it's been described by her that she lived in ancient Egypt, and she was able to describe some of these ruined temples in archaeological sites as she went. She ended up, long story short, she ended up working in Egypt with some Egyptologists, got hired over there, was one of the first women to work in that field with them in that particular capacity, and she knew some things about these temples that they were just discovering. She was able to tell them, oh no, the garden in the temple was over there. And so they start digging and they find out, sure enough, that she was right. And so there's some pretty compelling stuff like that. We'll get into some of those instances and everything else, but of course, love to hear your thoughts on this. What the hell is really going on with this acquired Savant Syndrome? 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. You can also click the Discord at troubledminds.org. Click the Discord link, and there you go. Let's go to Matt in Colorado. What's up, my friend? You're on Troubled Minds. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm having a good equinox. How about you?
Me too. Me too. I didn't realize it was an equinox, but I guess it is. Hey, happy equinox.
Yeah. It's the autumnal equinox today. Yeah. So, somebody in chat, you weren't on the air, but somebody in chat brought up about being struck by lightning might do these things too, in addition to head trauma. And so I just took that note down last, but I already had some notes kind of about the reincarnation thing and remembering different things and just some of my own personal experiences with that. And then that made me remember I got struck by lightning pretty not like down through my head and body to where I ended up in the hospital, but struck very close to me. I was sitting on the edge or shelf of this ridge about 600 feet up over the canyon, and the lightning went all through that ridge and zapped me pretty good, man. And I was kind of delirious for a bit and didn't know exactly what had happened and was dazed and confused. So it was a pretty, pretty strong, let's say, indirect strike. And I've actually been struck by lightning a little further away, but felt its effects a couple other times. And then in thinking about the brain injury stuff, I grew up skiing since I was 3 years old, and man, I have knocked my noggin so hard down on the hard snow or even sometimes kind of ice, so many times. Uh, and and one time ice skating, actually, I took a bad one and smacked my head, and I lost consciousness a bit. And then one time playing football, I was knocked unconscious, and it took me a while to come to. And the coach came over and was like, "Do you know where you're at?" and um, so I wasn't really. I was thinking about my past life recalls and different ways and experiences I've had with that, but I wasn't really relating it to the brain trauma injuries that I've had over my life. And so then I started thinking about it, and I was like, wow, maybe that has something to do with it. But one thing in talking about the gal whose name with the connection with Egypt, um, so I guess I don't know in between, certainly after some of those experiences of mine, but before others, I've always had this strong connection to Egypt and Egyptology, and got books on them, and was into the pyramid, and it's on my bucket list. I got to go there. I've just had this fascination with it, and different times I've researched and looked at the Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff. This is kind of weird, man, but I can actually somewhat read it. I can understand it. I don't know, if that comes from the brain injuries or whatever, but it just seems so similar to that gal's understanding. I can look at ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it's not like precise like reading English, but I get the gist of what they're talking about. And I've never studied them in my life, but I can kind of read that stuff. I don't know where that comes from. And but I've always been fascinated with the Egyptian stuff, and to me that's a connection to a past life. And I've also been told and found out in different ways I did have past lives, several in Egypt. That's my personal, belief, of course. But for me, I've got these past life Egyptian connections, and I don't know, maybe some had to do with my skull getting kicked around one too many times. Um, and another thing with a past life and sort of this Savant Syndrome, I was practicing this martial arts, and we use what's called a Joe staff, about a 4 foot long wooden staff. And I was practicing in my backyard one day, and yeah, and they teach you different techniques, or they call them katas or forms like they have in karate. So I knew those rote moves, right? And I was practicing those and swipping around. And then all of a sudden, I just started, I don't know what happened. Something kind of snapped. And I just started doing all these other moves and really advanced moves, and just went into this free flow, whipping this thing around like I was some master that had studied it for 4 years, instead of 6 months. And in that very moment, I remember like connecting with this like past life where I was like this, Japanese dude, or some kind of guy who had an expertise in this weapon. And I felt different. I felt like a different person. And I just had some level of mastery with that weapon, and that past life just sort of overlaid. And, that was, a while ago, a long time ago, but I've since heard that is a way that past lives can kind of spontaneously occur to people. And it can be a connection with doing the same thing that you did, or was a focus or important in that past life. I also experienced that with calligraphy, and always got, I got into calligraphy early, and I do that. And then I guess I had a past life where I was a scribe in the Library of Alexandria, and I spent my whole life, copying books. And now I'm a writer. But and so I've had my own connections and relations with past lives, and having those unlocked. I don't know exactly how. Maybe some, like I was talking about, that it's you're into a similar activity that you were really good in the past life. I've been struck by lightning. I've banged my head a bunch of times. I don't know how it happens, but it makes you wonder. It makes me wonder. Here's my theory. They have a concept called the veil of forgetfulness, which is if you want to take just for maybe juice reincarnation, that when we reincarnate, all of our past life memories are blanked out. We don't remember them. We're blocked from recalling them, so that we can just have this life and not be burdened by that or affected by that or whatever. So before we're incarnated this time, this veil, okay, like is put over your head or mind or consciousness so you don't remember stuff. And what I'm wondering here, my theory here, is that somehow a traumatic brain injury or lightning or something like that breaks through that veil of forgetfulness. And then that unlocks and those past life memories and abilities and talents and knowledges and skills. And so it's like we got the veil, but then somehow there's an accident, or maybe there's even a hack, which would be really cool if we could figure out a hack to be able to sort of intentionally break through that veil or consciously or find some process to recall all of these knowledges and wisdoms and skills and abilities from past lives. But, for my own part, I would say there's a lot of stuff I kind of know and can do that I did not learn that I would say came from somehow piercing that veil or having that veil cracked open or lifted.
Okay, so what's happening here, right? What's the theory? And have you heard of this Dorothy Eady? You ever heard of her before?
No, I have not, but I have heard another really famous guy who did a book that was a similar sort of thing where he was able to confirm a whole bunch. He had all these past life memories and like growing up in England in this town and whatever, and he was able to give the location descriptions of the house. He'd never even been to England, and then was able to go and verify it, and with multiple past lives and stuff. And so there are cases, they're rare, but there's cases where they can be really kind of documented and proved that the person could have no reasonable prior knowledge of this. And it's wild, man. It's wild stuff. But my theory is that somehow that stuff would have to be stored in consciousness, not the physical brain, because you're talking about a past life. It's a different brain. But I think the consciousness, comes into, works with, interacts with the brain, transfers knowledge and wisdom. And so it's the consciousness, or some people might say the soul, that's really the housing that knowledge and that past experiences and wisdoms. But that consciousness or soul is interfacing with the brain. But there, like I said, there's this sort of barrier between them, this veil. But sometimes that veil gets cracked open, and so maybe the veil is something that is in our physical brain that's placed when we incarnate. But then if there's trauma to it or damage to it, or maybe some near-death experience happens, it pierces that veil, cracks it open. And then the knowledge of the past lives, the wisdoms, the skills, the abilities that are stored in the consciousness and stored in the soul are then allowed to permeate down through, trickle down through, and then the person can become aware of them and utilize them. That's basically the theory I'm proposing here.
Oops, muted myself. Gotcha. Okay, so fantastic stuff per usual. Matt here, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show. We got a call behind you, so we got to bounce. He's got a book. Check it out. Links in the description down below. He got some other stuff too. Do me a favor, get me a one link to rule them all sort of situation with all your books in there, and we can pimp that too. He's got a book called Escape the Matrix and Explore Reality: A Guide to Radical Transformation and Empowerment. Links in the description down below if you're digging what Matt's saying. There's also a coupon code for a free copy, so get those while supplies last. Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the call. Always a pleasure. Happy Thursday and happy equinox, my friend.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for having me on again, and I look forward to the rest of the show.
Right on. Pleasure's mine. Thank you very much. We're talking about Dorothy Eady tonight. Have you ever heard of this individual? She seems to have had some sort of trauma when she was 3 years old, fell down the stairs, hit her head. They declared her deceased. An hour later, she's sitting up playing in her bed. And then from that moment on, very shortly thereafter anyway, she started remembering herself in ancient Egyptian temples, knowing things she probably shouldn't know or couldn't know. And it's an odd tale. It's one of those ones where you're like, wait, okay, so is this real then? Is this stuff, or is it, again, or is she just a, delusional, trauma victim is what you might say. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and how deep does this rabbit hole go with this acquired Savant Syndrome? 702-957-1037. Let's go to Robert in Pennsylvania. The Robert, my friend, how are you tonight? Go right ahead.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm getting feedback.
I'll see if I can fix it. Sorry about that. Go right ahead.
Okay. I've read a lot about Dorothy Eady. All right. And I also came to a conclusion some while back. Our suspicion of what might be how she wound up with this head injury, how she wound up knowing in intimate detail everything that she was involved with when she went to Egypt. I mean, she found she helped archaeologists locate archaeological finds that she couldn't possibly know where they were. She could read hieroglyphics. She could, to keep it short, it was, she had an encyclopedic knowledge. All right, and certainly the archaeologist and Dr. Who was it, Aswan or Swanee or whatever, the one that's head of the who's pretty much in charge of all the antiquities, would consult with her. All right, she lived a long life. But what I think may have been what caused this is that when she fell down those stairs and cracked her head, I think she had an out-of-the-body experience. All right, I think that she passed over, and she was told, like some people are told, you have to go back, you have to go back, you have to go back, and she refused. And what happened is that they had that body had to continue on, even if she was refusing to go back to it. And so they sent what's in parapsychology called a walk-in. All right, that took over her body, and it was the walk-in of a soul that had himself passed over and come back. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So basically, you think that somebody took her over. So she did pass, and some entity from somewhere else moved in that had this ancient knowledge. And so Matt in California said this in the chat as well. Is this some sort of like past knowledge, a past life, or is it possible there was some sort of demonic possession going on here? And so you're kind of maybe touching on that. So specifically, how does that happen? Like, and then we've talked about in brief, you and I on the show before about walk-ins, but it seems if we're talking in terms of remembering ancient Egypt, and you've never been there, obviously and clearly, because we're separated by 3,000 plus years, that she knows some things she shouldn't have known. So what walked in, I guess, is the question.
Well, the thing is, if she knew a little bit, all right, that'd be one thing. But like I said, she had an encyclopedic knowledge. I mean, there was absolutely no. I think it's over here, or I think this is, all right, she knew, all right, and she was so credible that the archaeologists and the people that were unearthing these ancient finds in Egypt and I still can't remember his name to save my soul, but the guy that's in charge of antiquities, they consulted her regularly. I mean, they had total respect for her, all right? And she was, when she passed on, there was great grief among all of them, all right, because, she was quite a source. There's no way that this could be faked at all. All right. This is why I said earlier that I think it's the most credible example of reincarnation I've ever read, and I read a lot about this Eady woman. Also, and she lived to be a ripe old age, by the way. But on the walk-in business, this is something that happens not just from falling on your head. There's been cases, I've read enough about these walk-ins. People, sometimes trying to live this life on this planet is hell. And some souls can't deal with it. They think they can. They jump into it. All right. They want to, progress, evolve, whatever. And they're too young, and they're mostly young souls, and they can't really adjust. It's like a 17-year-old sent to war. All right. And most of them may make it and be able to adjust, but there's always going to be some who just can't. And when that happens, and it's part of the whole thing that this flesh body still has to continue. This is where walk-ins come into play. Matter of fact, I wrote a story, where I allude to this walk-in business, where this young soul was supposed to enter the womb of this woman, and the soul couldn't stand it, and so somebody had to take that soul's place because that was in the script, and so there was a walk-in that took over, and the other one, the young soul, was released back to the netherworld or whatever. This happens. This is why sometimes people say, "Well, you're different. You're not the same person, I knew." Somebody is so radically different. Let's say somebody was rather stupid, didn't read books, just basically different type of person, and suddenly they're reading calculus, or they're reading, very, very dense books. They suddenly develop a passion for learning. That's an indication. When you see somebody or knew some time back, and they're totally different, or so different that it's hard to recognize them, that's a clear example of somebody who may have experienced a walk-in situation.
Yeah, I love the idea. And so we'll talk about walk-ins specifically, define them a little further, kind of run with this a smidge, because I think it's worth considering here, because they did declare Dorothy Eady dead. I'm going to say Eady. That's how you say it. That's how I'm going to say it. You know more about her than I did. But this is an amazing concept here, and maybe this is exactly what happened. I don't know. You're the best, Robert. As you hear the music, we're out of time. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate the phone call. Thanks for hanging out with us. You were the best. Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Have a great
Bye.
night. Robert here, a good friend of mine, good friend of the show. We call him The Robert. He's got a book called Stories from a Fractured Mind, the Robert Collection. Check it out. Links in the description. More Timeless Savant, Pharaohs Among Us, and your calls on Troubled Minds when we return. When we return, be right back. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to Troubled Minds. Join us as we discuss an upside-down world that nobody seems to notice.
We are talking about the alien abduction phenomenon.
The aliens are looking through your eyes and they're accessing your optic nerve. I'm doing fantastic. And through that optic nerve, they're transferring to your brain. People are random images as they traverse neurons in your brain.
So maybe,
and they also feel them planting or receiving memories or ideas or images.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest into the digital darkness. Yo ho, yo ho. Welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, Twitter, and Twitch. We're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. And tonight we're talking about one Dorothy Eady. We're talking about acquired Savant Syndrome. And what that means is some people out there, and it is rare, it is a rare thing, people have some sort of head trauma. Like in Dorothy Eady's case, she fell down the stairs. She hit her head. She was pronounced dead. Well, an hour later, she's sitting up playing with toys in her room because they carried her back up the stairs to her room. And so everybody was baffled. They were coming to retrieve the body and take it to the morgue, and she was sitting up doing kid stuff. She was very young, 3 years old. And so after that, she exhibited some form of past life recall, and not just in the sense of, well, you know, maybe I had a past life. There were specific details about the Pharaohs, about ancient Egypt, about particular temples that had yet to be excavated in terms of archaeological science. And she was able to help those archaeological folks later in life by telling them where, let's say specifically where the garden and the temple would have been. And so they did the thing. They followed her direction, and she ended up working with them in a scientific capacity, which is weird because that's not really scientific, is it? Right? It's not. It doesn't seem to be. And so that's the thing here. So she had this sort of out of body situation. She was pronounced dead. Who knows what happened? Robert just called, a fantastic call from Robert as always. He suggested maybe it was a walk-in, and maybe she actually a walk-in meaning. Get to that in just a sec. But that she was actually pronounced dead, and she did die. But because of that, in that sort of moment of crossing over, in the moment of death, in the moment of passage, something walked into her body, and some other soul, maybe, who knows, maybe trapped on Earth, or we're going to talk about that in a minute here. But and sort of maybe an ancient soul that had this knowledge, and so maybe it wasn't the same person at all. And so when she changed and suddenly started to become aware of all this ancient Egyptian stuff, being able to sort of inherently just read hieroglyphics and whatnot from the museum when they took her down there, it seems strange that something like this is even possible, right? So this, again, head trauma, acquired Savant Syndrome. And as Ronald over there on Rockfin pointed out, acquired Savant Syndrome is, well, ASS. Don't make me spell it. Damn it, Ronald. So what we're doing tonight is we're streaming on in all those places, Rockfin, YouTube. I said it before. We're broadcasting live on the Fringe FM, taking your phone calls as we discuss this idea. What happens when you have head trauma and it wakes something up inside of you? Meaning you become an artist, you become a brilliant mathematician when you didn't have like a knack for that before. There's a lot of things here that have happened, and they're very specific in how the brain reacts to trauma. But then layer on top of that maybe this sort of a past life waking up experience, or even like a paranormal walk-in. So that's what we're talking about tonight. If you want to be part of the show, just give us a call at 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. You can click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Just real quick before we go to James, this is from crystallinks.com. A walk-in is a new age concept of a person whose original soul has departed his or her body and has been replaced with a new soul, either temporarily or permanently. As I adhere to simulation theory, this is straight from this, the website here, I see it as the original insert of a person is replaced by another, which is technically the same thing. And so there you go. A walk-in means that somebody in that passage of, let's say, Takaran the Boatman or whatever, right? Whatever that passage is from life to afterlife, there's this maybe spot where the body's still warm, and it is spirit from somewhere else, maybe just earthbound, trapped here for some other reason, is able to walk in. Matt in the chat has suggested earlier, maybe this is a demonic situation. James suggested maybe not. But let's not tell you what James said. Let's go to James. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. James Salcido in Michigan. You're on Troubled Minds, my friend. How are you tonight? Go right ahead.
I'm okay. Great topic.
Thank you. Appreciate that. This is a weird one, right? Have you heard of Dorothy Eady before we start? If you've heard of her or not, and then go right ahead with your thoughts.
No, I have not. But I've heard of similar cases. So I have a kind of a little short list of points here, already kind of planned. First one is, I wonder if, again, with the severe injury or the even the near-death experience, I've heard of people that have had those kind of experiences, and it's not so much what you're describing, but instead what happens is they become more aware of the paranormal after they've had some kind of a serious injury. And I wonder if that's connected at all, or if it's something different or not.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. This is a weird one for me because, like, how would you know? Per usual, right? We're in this weird sort of gray space of maybe, right? Maybe. I don't know, but I do like the idea of a walk-in instead of a past life sort of regression here, sort of situation. I don't know. Could these things be combined? Maybe.
Well, it's all energy, so maybe, possibly. I don't know. Obviously I know that's a big shock. I don't know. But yeah, it's the walk-in idea. It's something that I haven't looked into a lot, but I've heard of. That was a great point from Robert there. But it does seem like it could make sense if this was some other person from some other time, and if time is different in, let's say, the spirit realm or the realm of consciousness, then maybe for that spirit, there was not centuries in between when they passed and then this moment after the little girl possibly passed. So that was there was the right opening there. Maybe even like Robert described, where it was just she, for whatever reason, didn't go. And this is all theoretical or hypothetical. She didn't go on, but this other spirit stepped in.
Yeah. And so the weird part is, so how does that work? I mean, so like I described, is it possibly like an earthbound spirit? Is it somebody, let's say, human spirit? And we're just speculating here. Of course, I don't expect James to know the answer because I don't know the answers. That's what we do on Troubled Minds. But just for speculation purposes, would it be somebody maybe trapped in like a purgatory type state and not somebody who had kind of went back to, let's say, quote, source to recycle and reincarnate, right? So it would have to be an earthbound sort of situation, right? Because if it recycles and the reincarnation bit, it's reborn, right?
Well, again, that's though assuming that time goes the same way. over in that, again, that consciousness realm or that spirit realm. If it doesn't, then it wouldn't necessarily have to be an earthbound. It could just be, like I said, one moment that spirit, that person from that ancient Egypt, let's say, passes, and then the next moment for them, oh, here's a body that is, that I could jump into, and there's whatever is in control of everything says this person has to go forward, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that same person's soul. Again, there's a lot of, it's hard to know like how that works or who's in charge of all that, but I don't think it necessarily has to be an earthbound. I think it all depends on how time works when you're not in a body, and where all that energy exists, if it does exist on Earth or not.
Damn it, James, the meat suit. This damn meat suit always holding us back. This is garbage. I demand a recount. So fantastic point about the time. So if it is all energy, and the situation with time being, let's say, fluid in that manner, maybe past, present, and future, like they say scientifically, even some speculations about scientists have described that it all exists in the same space. We just haven't been able to kind of crack the idea of how to move between the time spaces, right? So yeah, I love the idea. That's fantastic, man. And so Dorothy Eady in particular, so this is the weird thing. So let's say she did have a soul move in, and I don't know. So do you think? I guess as this maybe we'll touch on some weird spots here. But do you think things like this are planned, or do you think that it's more like let's say the 3-year-old falls down the stairs, hits her head, pronounced dead? Is it a sort of, well, let's take advantage of the moment? Or do you think things like this are maybe planned as part of a larger plan? You know what I mean? And I know that's kind of a big question. We're getting into religious stuff and, whether you free will and all that. But what do you think? You think it was like somebody was like, oh, here's a spot. I happen to be, ready and willing, and bam, jumps into the body. And what do you think about that?
Yeah. Again, I don't know. I don't like to think that anything like that has to be planned. Any kind of I've never liked the idea that suffering or pain of any kind has to exist for any reason. But I don't know. The idea of maybe spirits, or the basically the collective consciousness, let's say adjusting or improvising in response to certain events, I can see that. I can imagine that. I can imagine someone maybe, again, maybe they did just to them, I just passed, but oh wait, there's a situation, and if this will help, then yeah, I'll do it, and then they jump in.
Okay, yeah, that seems to track. I mean, I don't know. I didn't expect you to know, but I think the theories are good here. So walk-ins, paranormal stuff, this maybe fits. What about the idea of maybe the head trauma does maybe knock down a wall of sorts, or put a crack in the wall, and maybe open you up to a past life? And by the way, so as an addendum to that, so that's the first question, right? But then if you're, and I know you're not a betting man, neither am I. I live in Vegas, by the way, but I'm a betting man is a broke man. But if you had to choose between the two as a theory, what would you think? Was it sort of a walk-in situation, or was it like that head trauma does actually maybe kind of break open something that somebody from maybe open a passage to a past life memory? But go ahead. I know I was rambling there a little too much to ask. Hey, I'm just going to ask you like an 18-paragraph question. Go ahead, James. Tackle it.
Paragraphs. Let me see now. How am I supposed to keep track of? No, but I think that with the amount of experiences people have with past life memories anyway, I don't think it had to be a walk-in necessarily. And I'm not saying that Robert said it had to be either. I'm just saying I don't think it has to be, but I also don't think it can't be. So it's hard to say which one it is. I was saying in the chat earlier too regarding the Savant thing. I wonder if, because of that whole thing, I've been looking into a lot of stories of people's experiences and over the years, paranormal experiences. And one thing I find a lot of stories, these are stories I don't usually share because I like to keep things kind of light in my show that I do. I like to stick to the positive stuff, but there are a number of stories where people will say, I had this happen, at this point in life, or I nearly died this time, and sometimes even multiple times. And then after that, I had this paranormal experience where they never had one before. And so I wonder if the savant thing and maybe even the past life thing is a more extreme or a more severe version of that. In some cases, that's just the thought. I don't know, but it seems like maybe possibly.
Right, I can deal with possibly. And so if you're the betting man, what is your money on? Let's say house money. If you got house money to bet, are you betting this particular situation was like sort of like maybe peeling back the veil and seeing into a past life, or a walk-in?
I can't really choose. I can't really choose. I don't know. I think both are equally possible.
All right, flipping coins. I like a coin flip. I live in Vegas. Hey, if you don't like a coin flip, I don't know what you're doing. Robert adds over on Rockfin, he says, a walk-in is never an earthbound spirit. It is an evolved soul living in the higher dimensions of the afterlife that volunteers to replace the soul that can't cope with the physical existence it incarnated into. There you go. Very well said, very well written, as we would expect from the Robert. Comment on that? Comment on
that. And in a way that makes sense, in that it would be hard to expect someone that just passed to jump into a situation where they're already partway like through the process, and also they're going to be jumping into a body that, of course, for a little while anyway, is going to be deal with extreme pain, I'm sure, for a while there. So maybe it would take some kind of a more advanced or developed spirit to get through that in those cases.
Yeah. I'm into it. I love these ideas. I love the concept. I'm glad Robert brought up the walk-in. I always forget about that. Like he's brought that up a couple, 3 times on the show in the past, but it's one of those ones that kind of escapes me because it's one of those paranormal things that is let's say off the beaten path a smidge. I don't even think you've done walk-ins on your show, have you? Right?
No, I haven't, and it is. You are right. It's not something that a lot of people do bring up, and so I really am also glad that he brought that up, and that is something I will have to look into more, I think. So
there you go. You go.
Great call.
Yeah, absolutely. And great call, you. James here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. You guys all know him. You all love him. James Salcedo of Salcedo Paranormal. He's got a paranormal podcast. He's the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds. And check it out. Just links in the description. He's got a TikTok. He's got a YouTube. He's got the podcast. He's got the Discord. He's got all kinds of stuff. Go follow all the things. Come click the Discord link here as well. He's with us many times, sort of after hours as we muse into the night on the Troubled Minds Discord server as well. Come say hi. Come meet James. He's a great dude. Follow him. Do all the things. He's an author too. This is one of the things that really doesn't get brought up enough, and I think it should. So I'm going to do it. Damn it. He's an author. He's written lots of stuff, and his stuff is for sale on Amazon. So if you want to check that out, I would encourage you to. And it's a part of his link tree down below. Just click the one thing. It's got all the things. James, you're the best. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate all of your amazing takes. The paranormal expert of Troubled Minds. Appreciate it, my man.
No problem. Happy to be here. Also, I'm going to be on the Jess Rogie show tonight.
There you go. On. Nice. All right. So the way Fringe FM works is Fringe late night is 7 to 9 Pacific is Troubled Minds. 9 to 11 is Joe Roop lighting the void. And then 11 to 1 Pacific time is the Jess Rogie show, and James will be on the Jess Rogie show tonight. There we go. Thank you for the reminder. You're the best, my man.
No problem. Take care.
You too. There you go. And so there's some actual chatter out there in the chat talking about whether we choose our parents or not as sort of spirits in that reincarnation cycle. Interesting question, right? Interesting question. So what we're talking about tonight is ASS. Yeah, I said it. Damn it, Ronald. Acquired Savant Syndrome, all right? And then how this turns into a paranormal thing. We're going to get back to Dorothy Eady in a moment here. At the bottom of the hour, we'll go fully into her story and some of the weirdness that seems to be, let's say, to make it more plausible, all right? That maybe you could crack into a past life through some sort of brain trauma, right? And remember something, or even to the point, like Robert said, some sort of walk-in where you're pronounced passed, you're passed on, and Dorothy Eady fell down the stairs at 3 years old, hit her head extremely hard. They said she was pronounced dead. They took her up to her room, put her in bed, and basically called the morgue to come pick her up. And because the doctor pronounced her dead, and then by the time they get there an hour later, she's awake and she's like playing with toys. So, and then after that, she changed and she was remembering things from ancient Egypt, and said that she even knew the original Seti the First, the Pharaoh Seti the First, and as a servant in his palace had an affair with him, and even bore his child. And so it's a weird tale, but hey, this is what we're doing. This is Troubled Minds. So looking to hear from you as usual, right? What do you think about this acquired savant syndrome? And is it possible that it will sort of the brain is unlocked somehow, some way through this trauma to maybe peer into the past? And let's do this real quick to give you a quick idea of what is possible here. This is from ScienceAlert.com, and this is from 2016. An English-speaking teenager has woken up from a coma speaking fluent Spanish. And I kind of alluded to this a little bit when we started an hour ago. But here you go. A 16-year-old in Atlanta has made headlines this week after waking up from a coma speaking fluent Spanish. Ruben Semo is a native English speaker who knew some basic Spanish before he suffered a concussion during a soccer game. But when he woke up from the injury, he was able to speak Spanish like a native and struggled with English. Quote, "It started flowing out," Ruben told Melissa Chan over at Time. Continue, quote, I felt like it was like second nature for me. I wasn't speaking my English right, and every time I tried to speak it, I would have a seizure. It was weird, he added. It was not scary at all. I actually liked it a lot. It was really unique to me. You check that out? So his native tongue, after the concussion, trying to speak English, gave him seizures. But somehow he was able to speak fluent Spanish when he only knew the basics. So this is what I mean. So the ASS, damn it, Ronald, the acquired savant syndrome. And so again, you know, this is one example of a language learned. Sometimes people come back with after head trauma like this. It's rare, but it does happen. They come back with maybe accents from another place where they've never been. Maybe they come back learning a language or knowing a language that they never really fully knew. Or there's a situation with art we talked about. People come back as, let's say, savants in mathematics or music or all kinds of different things. And so I guess the question becomes, how deep does this rabbit hole go? Could you somehow, some way, through trauma, crack into a past life, remember something that we're not meant to remember as people? Or is this different? Or as Robert and James and we just discussed, and that suggestion, is it possible that that's not the thing at all? It's a walk-in. It's a completely different spirit that in a traumatic moment of a head injury, the previous soul passes on and a more developed spirit from somewhere else steps in to take over the trauma. And of course, they bring with them extraordinary abilities. Love to hear your thoughts at 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More about Dorothy Eady, this ASS, and of course your calls when we return. Be right back. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange, and we're streaming on Rockfin, YouTube, DLive, Twitter, and Twitch, and we are broadcasting live on the Fringe FM. Tonight, we're talking about the idea of head trauma, right? People have been known to hit their heads and learn a language, or become musical savants, or mathematical geniuses. Well, what happens when you crack your head on something and it opens up a portal to another place and another time? We've got this individual by the name of Dorothy Eady, who supposedly, at 3 years old, hit her head in a fall down the stairs and then remembered a past ancient life in Egypt with the Pharaoh Seti the First. Does this sound ridiculous? Does this sound legit? Does this sound somewhere in between? And that's what Troubled Minds is all about. I don't know. If I had the answers, I would just tell you the answers. And it would be super fast, and I'd play the thing, and, you know, like Sean Hannity and Don Lemon do. Oh, Don Lemon got demoted, by the way. Take that, Don Lemon, you dirty propagandist. I hope they all get demoted, by the way. I don't prefer one or the other. All the propagandists are just a-holes, and that's that. But, hey, Don Lemon. And if you guys didn't notice, just as an aside here, and it's going to trigger you for a sec, but Donald Trump called Don Lemon the dumbest man on TV. And, well, pot kettle black. But anyway, I digress. So we're talking about this idea of past lives. Reincarnation. What about walk-ins? And again, Robert brought up walk-ins. I think it's a fantastic idea. And meaning that, so when Dorothy Eady fell down the stairs at 3 years old, she hit her head. Maybe she did pass. Maybe her soul wasn't ready to take on the trauma of that injury, and a walk-in happened, meaning a spirit from another realm, an ascended higher spirit from another dimension, noticed that that body needed help and moved in the meantime and took over the life. And in that same instance was also bringing knowledge from ancient Egypt into the body of Dorothy Eady. It's a pretty damn wild story, right? So, and I just heard of it, like, it's one of those things where I've kind of heard the name in periphery sort of thing, but I never really dug into it. But there's some interesting things here. And so, of course, we're taking your calls if you have ideas with this and what the hell's actually going on. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Shout out to Lamas Fina, who had just joined us on the Discord. I see you there. What's up, buddy? Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I don't know. Answers? No, I don't have answers. But here we go. Let's get to Dorothy Eady, right? This is a fascinating story. Here we go. This is from Exemplore.com. And on the banks of the Nile, near an ancient temple built to the god Osiris by the Pharaoh Seti the First, lived an elderly Englishwoman. But this was no ordinary lady. Dorothy Eady died at the age of 3, and when she woke up, her life had changed forever. She was convinced that she had been born across the sea in ancient Egypt. She claimed that she had been an Egyptian princess. Many young children tell stories of past lives. Parents tend to put it down as imagination or telling tales. But in the case of Dorothy Eady, her reincarnation story wasn't so easy to dismiss. She insisted that she had been a woman named Bentrishit. I think that's how you say it. She went on to claim, of course, as an Egyptian name, she went on to claim that she had served at the court of King Seti, that would be the Pharaoh Seti the First. Her strange journey into the distant past, which she described in 1973, began as a child after she fell down a stairway and was declared dead by a family doctor. Dorothy was born in 1904 into a wealthy family from South London, England. Her life was very much like anyone else's until that fateful day when she fell down the stairs. Strangely, her parents and even the family doctor declared her dead. It was only when the doctor returned with the nurse to check her over that they found that the little girl was very much alive and well. Soon after, Dorothy took to hiding under tables and behind furniture. Her strange behavior didn't stop there. Instead of turning back into the little girl that she was before the accident, her actions became even more bizarre. She bewildered her parents with demands to be taken home. On another occasion, when her parents took her to visit the British Museum in London, Dorothy's behavior became even more bizarre when they entered the Egyptian galleries. Among the mummies of ancient Egypt were statues of all the Egyptian gods and goddesses. For no apparent reason, Dorothy rushed up to them and began kissing the feet of the statues. Then, to her parents' horror, she began screaming in a voice that sounded strange and old. The words that came out of her mouth stunned them. Dorothy stated that she wanted to be left with my people. On a separate occasion, Dorothy was shown a photo of the temple built by Seti I. She immediately told her father that the temple was her real home, a conviction she never lost as she got older. She then went on to claim that she had known Seti, that would be the Pharaoh Seti I, and that he was a kindly man. As her convictions grew, Dorothy began to learn how to read hieroglyphics at the British Museum. She astounded her teacher with the ability to learn the symbols easily. Dorothy explained to her that actually she wasn't learning a new language, just revising the old language that she had forgotten. And this gets even more weird. So just a quick brief of her life, this Dorothy Eady character. Not a character, she was a real person and, lived a very long life, like Robert said, and, passed on. She spent a bunch of time actually working with Egyptologists and helping them excavate temples and tombs and things like this with some sort of otherworldly knowledge as it goes. To this article back in, this is from 1979, right? This is from New York Times. What's up, guys? If you had all the answers, it might not be quick, Mike. Yeah, hell yeah, it would. Hell yeah, it would. So what do you guys think? As usual, right? Like I can ramble on because I can ramble. I'm a rambling man. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this a walk-in? Are we able to, through some sort of trauma, access a past life? Is it sort of breaking down the pillars of that reality? Shout out to the Night Stalker out there. Or is this something else? Is there something happening that maybe we haven't considered yet? This acquired Savant Syndrome, ASS. So this is an article actually from the New York Times in 1979, April 17th, 1979. Check this out. This is pretty amazing. Let's see. Omm Sety, as she would call herself, right? This is Dorothy, what's her name? Sorry, Dorothy Eady. I'm trying to remember all the things at the same time. So Omm Sety is what she came to call herself because she eventually gave birth to a daughter that she called Seti. And Omm Sety just means the mother of Seti. Okay, so Omm Sety may or may not have lived 3,200 years ago as a temple waif in the 19th dynasty under Seti I and Ramses II. It is certain, however, that the elderly Englishwoman feels at home only among the renowned pharaonic ruins that she began seeking as a child. A hummingbird of a woman with white wispy hair and bright blue eyes, she lives alone in a one-room brick house in this village not far from the limestone temple of Seti I at Abydos, where the Nile's lush farmland runs into a mustard-hued desert mountain 300 miles south of Cairo. Quote, "I came to Egypt in 1933 and I never left. I never wanted to," said Omm Sety, which she actually changed her name to, who was in her mid-70s, and this is, again, way back in 1979. Her English name, Dorothy Eady, has long been forgotten here. Everyone in the village where she has spent the last 23 years knows her by her Arabic name, which means Mother of Seti, for she indeed had a son, not a daughter, named Seti, now grown, and such usage is traditional among Egyptian peasants, which you don't use the first name of the mother, you use the Omm and the child, and Omm Sety is the mother of Seti. So again, right, and this goes back. This is not a new story. This is one of those stories it's been happening. It's been a situation that's I think it's fascinating. When I found this, again, going through some keywords and whatnot, trying to find some marketing angles here, it leads you to some interesting things, some interesting finds. And I never really spent any time digging into this Dorothy Eady or Omm Sety or any of this, because I kind of didn't know the depth of this story. But the story itself is pretty dense, pretty deep. It goes back quite a ways. But so what do you guys think is happening here? As usual, right? We got about let's say half of the last segment, about 10, 12, 15 minutes left. If you guys have ideas here, what's going on? So she fell down the stairs at 3 years old, was declared dead, brought up to her bed. They came to pick up the body and verify her death, and she was awake. She was playing with toys on her bed. And from that moment, shortly thereafter, once they brought her to the Egyptian Museum in London, she basically was just saying, "Take me home. These are my people." She knew. And again, she ended up. This is the odd part. when you start looking into this and reading some of the articles, some of the stories, and they're not new stories. Like I said, that was a New York Times article from 1979, and I'm pretty sure the New York Times was probably better then than it is now, even though they were probably garbage then, because garbage in, garbage out type of situation. But whatever, we're talking about Dorothy Eady, not the New York Times. But they can also go to hell, by the way. Dirty propagandist bastards. They can get demoted to the daytime slot like Don Lemon. Anyway, so I digress. But point is, right, what's going on with this? We're talking about this acquired Savant Syndrome, ASS. Damn it, Ronald. And the question is, it's in our brain already, right? It's got to be. And I think that's the crazy part about this, is you're like, okay, look, me, I could be a genius, right? Some of you laugh. I laugh. Well, I could be a genius. I just have to unlock it somehow, right? It's in there. And so that becomes the question of our brain, right? Of actually having this work and having it become who knows what. And we've talked about superpowers in the brain before. I got you, A-Pop, right there. Having superpowers in the brain before, in this idea of unlocking something that we can't access. And by some estimates, they say we use just a very small portion of our brain, because the rest of it's sort of in this low latency mode, just kind of taking in sensory information that the high latency mode processes. But then, we have the weird tales of, time slowing down, bullet time, and traumatic experiences like accidents. So there's something weird with our brain that it can do some amazing things. And so we've talked about that in the past several different times in several different ways. But is it possible that somehow head trauma can open the veil and allow you to see, let's say, something that happened 3,000 years ago in a past life? Or is this more likely that this situation, and of course we have to take into account that it's possible that maybe she was just putting us on, right? And was interested in, maybe it changed her personality. This is an article from anwaves.com and published through Medium. The Strange Tale of Dorothy Eady, Reincarnated Egyptian Princess or Delusional Trauma Victim. And I guess we have to always take that into account. Maybe this is just people telling tall tales. And as usual, it doesn't matter what I believe. It only matters what you believe. 702-957-1037. What the heck is actually going on here? Go to APOC in Oklahoma. What's up? No sleep. Roll it. How are you tonight? Oops. Or not? Hold on. Maybe I'm out. Oh, there she is. All right. One sec. One moment, please. APOC in Oklahoma. You're on Troubled Minds.
Hi. So, it looked like I was muted, but I didn't think I was. I pushed the button, so maybe I wasn't muted when I came in. Oops.
That's right. Hey, okay. You're allowed to be human. It's all good. First, have you heard of Dorothy Eady? Have you heard of this particular situation?
I have.
Okay. All right. And what are your thoughts? Go right ahead.
Well, I'm not super familiar. I'm familiar with her story, but I haven't delved into her story real deeply. I have a family member who actually they got their pastoral indoctrination or whatever through a church that supposedly had a female walk-in as the pastor. And that was interesting. Her story is pretty interesting as well. There's all kinds of possibilities, right? I want to address, though, in my exhaustion, the simultaneity of the thing being possible. So, we debate on whether things are intended or planned or decided in the moment or what if it's simultaneous? What if it all is true? What if because we're making those decisions, and I know I've brought this up before, but what if because we're making those decisions we already have, right? And so that is quote unquote the plan, but it still takes us to make those decisions. It still takes these deciding moments for the end to happen, and us to be able to look back and go, yeah, that's how it worked. And so it could be all the same, just like a lot of these other sort of examples could be like simultaneous things, things that don't just have one answer, things that have many, many answers. And I think maybe that's part of the maybe juice thing. We don't have the answers because maybe there are so many answers, and maybe many of them are true.
Yeah, or again, I think in terms of what is true, what is not true, maybe it's a little more gray, right? We like to sort of define things in terms of right and wrong, true, left and right, up and down. Maybe there's just a blurry-ish of things, and here we are, just shrugging our shoulders and going, okay, maybe. Can you tell me a little bit more about the walk-in preacher? That sounds creepy AF to me. Just to say.
I know.
Right. It's like wait, come on. So you got a walk-in who's actually got a flock, right? Like that. That doesn't seem odd or suspicious at all.
Well, it was just a metaphysical church, basically, and it was it wasn't. They didn't do any weird like cultish things or anything like that. They just basically had a community, and she talked about what she thought was true, and people liked it, and that was it. There wasn't this there weren't any weird thing. I've been there a few times. There weren't any like weird things going on. I know a few people who actually live in the community. So yeah, it's not. It sounds freaky, but it's not freaky.
I wasn't making accusations. I was saying like you just described it. It kind of sounds freaky. Like what walked in to take over the church, if you know what I'm saying? Wink, wink.
Oh no! It was long before. That was when she was younger. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I'll leave it alone. I just thought it. I thought it was a interesting tidbit.
It is. It is very interesting. But yeah, I thought I'd throw that in. Do you have anything else you want to throw at me?
Yeah. Of course. So what's happening with this gray matter situation? Like, so it's in us. It's in us. The brain is there. It's part of the meat suit, and it seems like the head trauma is unlocking these things, right? And again, it could be the musical, it could be the mathematical, it could be learning a language, it could be even, dare we say, remembering a past life. I saw you typed in the chat there a little ways up that something about cracking, kind of like they crack your head. Maybe it cracks like a hole in the veil or something like this, right? Is that maybe what's happening here?
I mean, so if you think about it, our bodies are in the metaphysical communities are seen as kind of containers, right? But we have a biological makeup. So our brain, our neurons, our biological functioning is working properly for us to work here properly. And so, yeah, what if that sort of jars something in respect to, and that's why I kind of brought up lightning too, because that would also sort of affect the neurons, right? It would give the neurons sort of this shock along with the rest of your body. And, it's possible, I guess, that something in relationship to the brain and how it works, and maybe this sort of defense against remembering things, because maybe it would be really difficult if we did remember things while we were here. Maybe it would be so much more challenging than it already is if we remembered all these, it would be really cool. But wouldn't it be very sort of complicated and less spontaneous and less sort of in a space of discovery if we did remember all of these things? It's interesting to me how it's kind of set up. It's set up to where we go along and we might remember certain things. We might remember, familiar feelings or stuff like that. And it might, lead us in different directions, but we also have this element of question, this element of discovery, this element of something that's inspiring, us to kind of move forward. And it's like without that, without sort of the memory loss, so to speak, I think it would be much more complicated. I think that things would be less sort of magical. Things would be less interesting in a way. Because maybe we get to discover some of those things later, you never know. But yeah, we are biological. We have this thing that happens within our minds. I also have a different theory potentially that when we're born, possibly we have that access. We do have something that's open, and either two things, maybe either we grow and develop biologically and build, and that biology builds the wall or the device with which to keep us contained or without those memories, or we are intended to remember these things, and maybe it would be much more interesting, and maybe it would be even though more complicated, maybe it would make certain things much more simple, And so what if maybe when we're little kids, we have this natural sort of inclination to remember things? And I know my parents used to tell me, my mom told me that I could tell her what it was like before I was born and what it was like there before I was born. And then I'd tell her all these things, and I'm like, well, where was your recorder? Why did you not get this on tape? Because she doesn't remember any of it. And I'm like, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
But
kids say some creepy crap sometimes, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she said it was really amazing, whatever it was I was saying, but that's all she remembers. And anyway, so, what if we're sort of programmed out of it, like we're programmed out of a lot of things? What if this inundation or this saturation of media programming, social programming, or educational programming, what if all these things are actually the thing that sort of pushes this stuff back? And I sort of incline more towards that. But again, that spontaneity is interesting, that discovery is interesting as well. So I do kind of think that that maybe we have this natural innate ability, and very probably natural ability within us to actually have these memories. And maybe when our neurons get rearranged, if we have a bump or a shock or a whatever, maybe these things sort of realign us to that space, realign us to the beginning point, realign us to our childhood, and maybe sort of wipe away some of that programming, maybe get rid of some of that inundation of BS that we deal with. It could be either one, but or something else. I don't
or something
know.
in between. What's super weird about all of it is that all of this is so we can say the Omm Sety stuff and Dorothy Eady is one thing, but then all the rest of this has been scientifically verified. Like, it happens. And so it's like, wait, so how much don't we know yet? It's wild. Hey guys, APOC here, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. We're out of time. You can hang around if you want for some bonus time, of course. Please give her a follow. She's got a podcast called Apocalypse Tao. She's got a TikTok channel. She's got a YouTube channel. All the things, podcast, links down below. She's got a link tree. And please give her a follow. Good friend of mine, good friend of the show. Thank you, APOC, for popping in here. As we finish, it goes like this. You're listening to us on the Fringe FM. Stay tuned for Joe Rip Lighting the Void. You've listened to us on the other platforms. Stay tuned for some bonus time. Have a great night. Troubled Minds out. Oh, we ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. Hey, the end of Troubled Minds was just a nasty rumor. We're going to keep on trucking. Got some bonus time coming up. Still here with APOC. Let's go straight back to APOC and get, in case you got any additional thoughts you want to add to this idea of Omm Sety, Dorothy Eady, these walk-ins, anything else. I'm fascinated by a pastor walk-in because why not? Like I said, how about this, APOC? Is it possible we have devious trickster spirit entities that might walk in to a particular body and know that they're going to take over a church in the future? If you know what I'm saying. You could tell I'm fascinated with the concept.
I mean, I'm getting the echo.
Oh, my bad. Continue. I will kill it.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's possible, and because I think, anything is possible. Is it likely? Not in my intuition. I don't think. I think that, as MJ, I believe it was MJ that was mentioning it. I think if you, how do I phrase this? I think that if something like that occurs, then there's sort of and call me an optimist, I don't know, but it could be that there's a bigger picture involved, right? And if there is, I would suspect it's very much less likely that it would be some like takeover kind of thing. But I could be wrong. I did want to say something about about the reincarnation stuff, because kids, my gosh, there are so many stories of kids that I cannot remember the guy's name. There's a guy that spent years and years and years. Somebody in the chat will probably answer this question, but there's a guy that spent a very, very long time, most of his life, the majority of his life, studying reincarnation in children. And mostly because the children were the ones that would come out with these, stories, and a great deal of them would be absolutely correct. And of course, there's kind of the famous one, and I think he was involved in that one as well. The kid that started drawing pictures of planes and saying that, and his name was the same as as his past life's name. Apparently, I think it was Jack or Mike. Even maybe I think it was Jack probably, but he was a pilot, and they found out later that this was very likely the case, and he just kept talking about this other life, and he mentioned the exact name of the plane, the type of the plane, his buddy's name. He referred to his buddy who got killed. He talked about this wartime that he had died in, and that was his life back before this one. And I think that prior to that, he was an actor, or I might be mixing up too. But all of these things got verified, and his family ended up taking him to a reunion that a lot of the vets were having in that unit, and I think that's where he met the sister of the guy that he thought he was when he died, and the sister was just sort of spellbound by this kid and believed it. She believed it because of the things that he said and his personality and all of these things. And so, I mean, these things are fast, and there are much more amazing stories that come out like this. Just the consistency of facts that these people remember when they're children. And so, I don't know. It's really fascinating, and in most cases in India, it could, in probably a lot of cases, be genetic, because they usually have like reincarnation stories, or verifications of people that come from like a group of people that aren't that far away from them, and it's more localized for some reason. But people in America and other countries, it's like they're spread out across the world, really, as to where a lot of these facts and stuff are able to be verified. So it's like you think about the potential of it maybe being genetic and coming out in sort of genetic memory, and you have to dismiss that with the majority of these cases. So is it a collective consciousness thing? Is it something that maybe the memories of the collective are coming in? Well, I don't think so, because then you'll have more than one. Probably it would make sense that would be the case. So why do you just get one, I would ask? So
maybe it's the speed limit. It's the reincarnation walk-in speed limit of the multiverse. What is it from Multiverse of Madness? Doctor Strange, right? You cannot possess the bodies of the dead, right? It is against the laws of the universe, right? Who knows? Super wild stuff. Matt says Ian Stevenson, and that sounds right to me. Is that correct?
That is right. That is correct. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
That is correct.
Jim Tucker, James links as well. Thank you, James. Yeah, I was looking at that as well. It was it was Ian Stevenson was the original. This is like going back like decades. He's been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. Specifically, spent a ton of time doing only this research on children and past lives. It's wild stuff. And I know we did, the reason I know the name is he came up in some, it's so crazy how it all blends together so many years later, like literally 4.5+ years of Troubled Minds. Like these names are distant memories to me because, right, your brain can only hold so much at one time. But like we talked about Ian Stevenson at some point in the past. It may have been 3 years ago, and right, sort of how this reincarnation effect and children specifically. There's sort of like this great, I guess we'll call it a grace period, right? Of like the new soul adapting to the new reality, but it's an old soul. But there's like kind of this grace period of memories that are latent from a past life is kind of what, if I recall properly, what Ian Stevenson was sort of suggesting, which is why some of these children are able to tell you specific things. And some of that stuff, some of those studies, if you guys are aware, are specifically they'll have like birthmarks. Like this is where that sort of idea came from. When they have like a big birthmark on their shoulder or something, they will tell you a story, these children. And again, not all cases, again, results not typical, all the rest of this stuff, and right, all the rest of that. But you'll get stories of these children with these huge birthmarks and say, that's where I was killed in a past life. Like a spear was thrust through my chest. And there's a huge birthmark there in their current life. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some wild stuff. Look it up. Look up Ian Stevenson. Thank you, Matt, for pulling that name out. I wouldn't have remembered it, but the second you typed it, I was like, yes, that's the guy. I was pretty sure, like 90% sure. But it's wild stuff. Look up Ian Stevenson, and there's some stuff to suggest, like in psychology and whatnot, that there's maybe something to this. So it's not all totally woo. Like I said, you ever been around a kid who said some bizarre shit? Yeah. I have. I'm like, what did you just say? Like, how could you possibly know something like that? And well, there we go. What else you got for us, my friend?
This could be a whole show. I mean, just reincarnation in general could be a whole show. But it is fascinating, and I have known I'll just quickly move into adults, because adults will absolutely occasionally begin to remember past lives, or they will have sort of ongoing memories from a child into past lives. That doesn't occur quite as much, but a lot of times people will get these memories as they actually grow older, as they get older. And there was an amazing documentary. Again, maybe somebody can help me out. It was a British documentary about there's this guy who hunted down these adults, these people who had memories of past lives and I think if I remember correctly, it was initially instigated by somebody who did hypnosis, but don't quote me on that. I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm pretty sure that it started off with them doing regressions or doing hypnosis or doing something, and then somehow it went into this. They started talking about these other lives or talking about being somebody else. And this person was like, what? They didn't, this is how I remember it. As I remember it, they didn't understand what was going on. They didn't really have an idea about past lives. They didn't, if they did, they didn't believe in it. It was something like that. And so I don't know if the person who was actually working with these people were the ones that, and I think there were two people, were the ones that did the project and did the documentary. But they followed, what they did is they took the ones that had the most detailed memories and facts that they had, and they traced down. And this was old. This was an old documentary. This was like, I don't know, maybe 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, it was pretty old. And they took these people to where they remembered being, and they would let those people lead them to wherever it was. They'd take them to this kind of random place, and they'd walk to wherever they thought, their home was. And there were other, I mean, it's just, man, I'm going to try to find that documentary because it was really fascinating, because some of the stuff was just incredibly right on, just incredible. Like, there was a lady, and what they did is, I think this is the most fascinating one to me. There was a lady who they took out into kind of this pasture, this field or woods, and there was a building that they had already researched used to be the home that they thought she was talking about. And she wandered around and kind of followed a creek or something, and ended up finding this building. And excuse me, she was talking about the things that happened there, and she bent down. She said, there should be a mark on the floor right here. She bent down, and it was a stone floor, and or he bent down and wiped it away or something, and sure enough, there was this mark, and it was like she described. And it would have been like, I don't know, a couple hundred years before or something like that. But these were also all people that had never been to those places in this life before. So it's not as if they were familiar with them. These mostly were people who had just mainly lived in one place all their life, And so it happens. I mean, it's like these facts, when they get verified, they cannot logically really be ignored or displaced. It's really fascinating.
And creepy, and right, again, it all kind of comes together, it all merges together, and fascinating, creepy, maybe even pseudoscience horse shit. Who knows, right? But like, but again, back to Ian Stevenson. If you guys, thank you again to Matt for pulling that name out. I would never have remembered it, but it was one of those tip of the tongue sort of situations where I was like, I know who this is because we talked about this at some point, and I couldn't remember. Check out the name Ian Stevenson, and you'll see what I mean. He spent years and years and years and years following up on this exact stuff with children, right? And finding out to his conclusions that this is real. Like, there's some sort of maybe soul recycling happening, and or at least maybe latent memory from one life to the next, whether it's epigenetics or whatnot. And by the way, epigenetics is a brand new thing. They're just learning that this is a thing, right? Here we go. This is an article. Its link is in the description, of course, as always. SciTech Daily. This is from just a couple days ago, September 6th. Rewriting our understanding of epigenetics. Scientists reveal we inherit more than previously thought. Real quick, Chief Investigator Professor Marnie Blewett said the findings initially left the team surprised. Quote, "It took us a while to process because our discovery was unexpected," Professor Blewett, joint head of the Epigenetics and Department Division at WEHI, said. Continue, quote, "Knowing that epigenetic information from the mother can have effects with lifelong consequences for body patterning is exciting. As it suggests, this is happening far more than we ever thought. It could open a Pandora's box as to what other epigenetic information is being inherited." And that's, well, that starts to get creepy. Shit starts to get creepy, doesn't it? When you're like, wait. And we talked about this too with the epigenetics show we did. This is maybe 6 months ago or so. But I was like, so if this is possible and we're actually taking on traits of our ancestors, are we possibly having their dreams as well, right? Like, that was the dream world. We kind of merged the two ideas, because why the fuck not, right? I mean, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, true. This stuff is just super fascinating. It's when you can look at some things and they just fit in a way that is very difficult to dismiss, and it's something that actually the majority of the planet does believe in reincarnation, but the majority of Americans do not, so it's where we live right here. It's like this this thing that just is this still kind of taboo idea, and if you bring epigenetics into it, if you bring this other stuff into it, it even gets more sort of pointed and interesting. And you can, I think if we take all the pieces and we follow the trails, it might lead somewhere very, very interesting. Because I don't think that there's just one part to things. I think that things are multi-layered and fractal, and so it could be a certain way in the biological world, a certain way in the spiritual world, a certain way in the reincarnation of such, and it could be layers of things, and they could all have different answers, but they could all work together, so I think if we take multiple pieces of information, multiple diffusion, just diffuse these things into an information bucket, right? And say, what do we get when we put all this stuff together? Eventually, when we learn more about it, and I think that could be a fascinating thing.
Hell yeah. Double hell yeah, fist pump. If you're on the highway and you're driving out there and you're listening to us in a big rig, go boop, boop, but toot the horn for us. Toot the horn for us. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's wild, and that's why we talk about this stuff. Like I said, to be perfect, you know me, APOC. To be perfectly honest, I don't know how much of this stuff I even believe. But as I always say too, the universe doesn't give a shit what I believe. It's going to do what it does regardless. So I think it's worth considering, and that's what this show's always been about, just kind of considering possibilities. And here we are. You're the best. APOC got no damn sleep. What are you doing? Are you about to pass out? You about to do this?
No, I've got a second wind. I've had more coffee. Dang it.
That'll do it. Oh god, that second wind. It's always a killer, right? You're like,
right.
Yeah, I know about it. I finally, for like the last 3 weeks, I've been so out of sync sleep wise. This last like two days has been kind of back to normal, a little bit back to normal. So I got no complaints. But yeah, the struggle is real, right? The sleep struggle is real.
It is.
But yeah, fantastic stuff as always. You were amazing. A good friend of mine, good friend of the show. Apocalypse Tau podcast. Links in the description. Go follow all that shit. Go do the thing. Check out her TikTok. It's pretty amazing with some AI art and some other stuff. There's a guest appearance on her TikTok, by the way, by a dude you may know. His name is Michael Strange. Check it out. Go check it out. It's all up there on the TikTok, and it's all in the links in the description below.
At Confusion Limited, because I still haven't put it in the thing yet, and I did send you the link because you were asking about it a couple days ago. So just so you know, yeah.
At
Do
Confusion
it. Go
Limited.
check it out.
There you go. On TikTok.
At
There it is.
Confusion Limited on TikTok. That's the easiest way.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're the best. You're the best. Have a fantastic night. Sleep well when you do. Holy shit. We're still doing this. We're still doing this. I don't know, right? Let's go back to Omm Sety real quick. This individual by the name of Dorothy Eady. All right. Now, she started automatic writing. All right. At some point. Okay. So here's the thing. She says that back to Dorothy Eady real quick. She said she was actually lived in the court of the Pharaoh Seti the First, Seti the First. All right. Now, this gets weird because she said she was just a regular servant, but had a connection with the Pharaoh himself, and ended up having the affair, right? Because the Pharaoh is not supposed to just be having kids with all the randoms. You're supposed to be having royal kids, right? Official royal kids. So the story goes like this, right? She says in her memory of her past life, she was a servant in his court, had a connection with the guy. They ended up getting freaky. She ended up having a child of his, matter of fact. And she was run out of court, and eventually, sadly, in the end of that first life, ended up committing suicide. And so her memory of the palace and the places, and again, she was making in weird terms memories of how these individuals were in life, right? From like 3,000 years ago or whatever. It's like I said, it's wild. And here we go. Here's actually a picture here of the mummified head of Seti the First. Right, so she's kind of verified all this as she remembered. But listen to this. So she married an individual by the name of Abdel to move to Egypt, basically. So she married this guy, moved to Egypt. They only stayed together for a couple years, but it moved her from her young adulthood to where she wanted to be back home. All right, back to Egypt. Listen to this. Dorothy concentrated on the studies of Egyptology, and Abdel had no interest in these things. That was her husband at the time. To make matters worse, Abdel would occasionally see Dorothy in a trance-like state, get out of bed late at night, and commence what many call automatic writing. Abdel would witness Dorothy scratching hieroglyphics on paper, eventually spanning 70 pages on what she later described as her spirit guide, Hor-Ra, Hor-Ra, discussing Omm Sety's previous life. On one occasion, Abdel's father ran out of the house after claiming to see a pharaoh sitting at the foot of Omm Sety's bed. The marriage would eventually fall apart, and Abdel transferred to Iraq, leaving Omm Sety to her studies. So she, automatic writing, apparitions from other people seeing these things, and her having this, this memory of possibly a past that may or may not ever existed. Yeah, that's wild, right? That's crazy shit. Look it up. All the links are in the description below. Like, read some of this stuff, and you'll be like, right? It makes you go, And that's the thing. If you guys are like 90s, if you're old enough to know what I'm talking about, things that make you go, yeah. There you go. What's up? Let's see. What's up? The Robert says, what do you say? He says, if I had a walk-in, if Michael Strange had a walk-in, my guess is the soul that took over was the spirit of Long John Nebel. Here's the link on Wikipedia. I'm not sure who this is. I've never heard him talk, but apparently a radio guy. and he says that his arc is similar, and apparently sounds like a great dude. He passed in 1978. I'm not going to tell you what year I was born, but you don't have to be overlap or whatnot. But also I never had a near-death experience, so cross your fingers. Thank goodness for that. But yeah, cool. Long John Nebel. I'm gonna have to go check him out. And Ronald says this. This is pretty nuts too. Oh yeah. Real quick, or while we're on the Robert says, I believe APOC is referring to the Book of Children's Past Lives Memories by Dr. Ian Stevenson. That's the one. Ronald says this also. When my nephew was born in 1986 in Alabama and was learning to talk, he had a pronounced British accent. That's fucking weird. That's fucking weird. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. What's up? James says apparitions of pharaohs have been seen in and around the pyramids, according to some accounts. Interesting. There it is. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, this is, like I said, I don't know the answers. I just see the information and go, And by the way, don't ever forget, guys. We're drinking the maybe juice means that this might all be hogwash, right? This all might be, all right. But I clearly, if I thought that was the case, that it was all hogwash, I wouldn't be talking about it, right? And so the fascinating part is how much is and how much isn't. It's fascinating. All right. So there we go. We're doing the thing, hanging out. Got a few more minutes for you. 702-957-1037. Looks like Matt in Colorado's back. What's up, bro? Keep it brief, pretty please, because we got to wrap this up. I'm going for a walk with the dog in a sec. Go right ahead. You're on Troubled Minds.
Yeah, well, that last part of the story with Dorothy, with her husband, it's like, I'm sure he was like, okay, you're up in the middle of the night writing hieroglyphs. That's one thing, but when there's a pharaoh apparition at the bottom of the bed, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I'm gone. Peace. I got things to do, and it's anywhere else but here. Yeah, that creeped me. That creeped me out for sure.
Yeah. So, APOC, great call there, and I'm with James on when you asked him to put the money down 50-50, whether it's a unveiling to the reincarnation or a walk-in. Yeah, who can say? And there may be some crossover with these things. I don't know. But, and like APOC said, the reincarnation, and maybe the title could be a whole show, and maybe the title is, is there evidence, scientific evidence, backing up reincarnation? Because there's a lot of people that done a lot of work on that, and it seems to stack up to make a pretty good case with a lot of data and research and stuff.
Yeah,
and I also think
he's not the only one, by the way. Just do the search, guys. Do reincarnation and science, and there's a whole lot of stuff. There's like Psychology Today. There's a whole bunch of different links I found, and I was reading a little bit tonight. But the thing about doing the show for this many years is I don't have to read a ton to kind of, because I have like a knowledge base of like that kind of, like the circular going forward sort of situation. But I do like to check myself and see if there's anything new. Anyway, go ahead. We got a call behind you, so we got to get to them. So brief, go.
Yeah, I think also I love what Robert brought up about the walk-ins, and I think that's a whole nother show. And I've met a couple, 3 of them in my lifetime. It's very rare, but man, it's some trippy stuff. These are some unique individuals. So that's another show sometime too. I'll let you go.
Amen. You're the best, bro. Appreciate it, Matt. That's Matt in Colorado. Let's do it. Let's go to Big Y in Hawaii. You're on Troubled Minds, my friend. Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
What's up, brother? How you been?
I'm good. Chilling, man. To talk weird shit by dark at night. You know us. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah. Well, I'll be quick. I just, when you read the last part of the story, one thing that struck me as interesting was her spirit guide's name. Ra, you said? The last part being Ra. And it reminded me of the law of one again, and this raw energy allegedly channeling itself back into the zeitgeist, back into the, what do you call I guess I just said it, the zeitgeist. But nonetheless, if a lot of these cases are with, these psychological studies and these, hypnotic cases where people have to go under hypnosis therapy to even recall these past lives. And that's where they're getting these people, being able to channel at a certain point too, maybe not having a head injury, but on the other side of it, with the walk-ins, have you ever heard of something called the Jerusalem Syndrome?
Not that I recall, no.
So allegedly there's a group of people, when they go to visit the Holy Land, there's a consistent number that's been rising over the last 20 years where people get this idea that they're reincarnated somebody. It doesn't matter. It could be a bunch of different type of, biblical figures or, even Jesus himself at times, but people will get this. It's consistent. People end up in the hospital. They'll start only wearing they'll take the bed sheets from their hospital and only wrap them up in what they think is the dress they should wear, the garb, and they'll religiously visit religious sites, if you know what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? They'll just consistently only go by this name. It's just, there's a whole video on it I watched on a channel called Mysterious Middle East. And it's an interesting thing because it kind of goes to this walk-in. Are these energies around that are able to, maybe at our weakest points kind of step in? You know what I mean? And it doesn't even have to happen with a traumatic injury. Does it have to be brain traumatic? Because if the type of things that we go through on a day-to-day basis, any type of trauma can change your DNA radically enough to maybe have a brain shift or a perception shift, I should say. So, it just was an interesting thought to me as well. The Ra thing as well as the Jerusalem Syndrome, the two things that kind of popped up that are, like people have said before, shows in and of themselves.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. Never heard of it, and I will definitely do that. And this is why we do it, right? We're just kind of tossing ideas back and forth, and kind of like we're playing kind of a leisurely game of ping pong, and or let's go back to old school 8-bit, or not even 8-bit. What's the original Atari 2600? The regular Pong. Yeah, fantastic stuff as always. You're the best, my friend. If you got a guess here, yeah, right, exactly. The things and the ball that wasn't even a ball because you couldn't have enough pixels to make a ball. It was more like a square. but anyway, I digress.
We've come so far.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's a metaverse with goggles and the spirits wandering around and big carrots the size of, I don't know, big trucks. So if you got to make the guess, we're flipping coins here again. Regarding Omm Sety and this Dorothy, damn it, I keep forgetting her name, Eady, Dorothy Eady. Do you think it's more or less likely it's a walk-in, or do you think that there's some sort of mental capacity we have within us to unlock the idea of a past life? Do you think it's in there and we just need to unlock it, or something else?
This is where I give a interesting theory. I think it's both. So I think there's something within our DNA. There's a reason, say, women give the X gene chromosome and men give the Y chromosome or an X chromosome. And then, from that, you have an imprint of all the people before you. You are the Y chromosome from every Y male down the line that your gene would follow. And I think we just have these possibilities within our DNA that is in and of itself unlocking something within the mind or within the brain. You know what I mean? I just think it's possible that maybe our ancestors being more connected to the earth, or even more connected to just different things, different knowledge that we take for granted today, I think that allowed them to be able to unlock abilities and capabilities with their body that, you can see it in humans today that can jump in and just hang out in freezing cold waters for hours at a time to train their body, or people that dive to just tremendous depths. When you push yourself to the capabilities you believe you can achieve, the human body can do amazing things. And I just think that we are just going to continue unlocking things and stories like this until we really have a full scope of all right, well, hey, you know what? We didn't realize we were AI the whole time. But hey, bud, who are you taking over again?
It always comes around to simulation theory, doesn't it? It makes it all make sense. You're the best,
right? It's just yeah. Just we're all Neo, right? Just gotta unlock it.
Just gotta unlock it. The best part about the Matrix series is the final end scene of that first one, where he kind of like realizes it and he like flexes in the subway and the walls just go, brrr, they bend around him.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
That was an eye-opening scene.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate the call. Big Y in Hawaii, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. Always a pleasure, brother. Have a fantastic night. Thanks for the call.
Hey, shoots, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too, my man. There you go. Easy as that. All right, let's roll it. Let's wrap it. Fantastic stuff. Hey, look, this is why, right? That's why we do it live. Like, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good sometimes. I'm bad sometimes. But look what happens, right? We add all these amazing people into the mix, and that mix of Michael Strange mediocre becomes boom, right? Don't ever forget or underestimate the power of collaboration. And thank you guys for all the amazing calls tonight. Thank you for all the amazing chat, keeping us in focus here and all the great ideas. Shout out to Robert for the walk-ins. I always forget about the damn walk-ins. What the hell am I doing? I'm doing it wrong. As we finish, it goes like this, right? It's Thursday night, which is Troubled Minds Friday. So tomorrow we'll have the news show at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And what we'll do is have a fantastic weekend is what we're going to do. And it goes like this. If you want to help the show, there are a number of ways, right? Number 1, sign up on Rockfin. Number 2, Patreon. Number 3, you can buy me a coffee is down below. Number 4, hats, merch, shirts. Shout out to Derek the Night Stalker, just got his Synchro Mystic Troubled Mind shirt. Shout out to James snapping up a shirt a while back. There's a lot of people out there that have been buying some merch. If you like the logo, you like the stuff, troubledbands.com. You can find not me in a hot tub, but pretty sweet merch. Go check it out. Other ways, sub up on Twitch. It's probably the worst way to like spend direct money. Sorry, Twitch, if you're listening and like blacklisting me for saying that, but you take 45 or 55 fucking %. I mean, come on now. But you can also, if you've paid for Amazon Prime and you want to sync up your Amazon Prime account, your Twitch account, you've already paid for it. It kicks another $2.49 per month my way if you want to do that. That's a fantastic way to do it. Finally, if you don't have money or don't want to spend money, don't have money to spend or don't want to spend money, both of those qualify in the same category. Spread the word. Spread the damn word. Share us on Reddit or Facebook groups or retweet or do the things and just good old-fashioned word of mouth will beat the algorithms all day, every day. Let somebody know out there there's a conversation happening that's not about Trump and Biden, for fuck's sakes. I mention them from time to time, but my God, can you imagine spending your whole reality talking about those two assholes? I can't. So there you go. Just spread the word. It helps a lot. And the final way, the easiest way, is to listen to the podcast feed. The podcast feed. We're over. We hit our 500th episode today. Hit the podcast feed. We've got over 415,000 total downloads, and it's monetized. It's limited commercial interruption. But if you want to help the show, go listen to an old show over this weekend. It's simple as that, right? When you're cooking dinner on Saturday night and you're like, damn, there's nothing to listen to. I want to hear something good. I'm sure you haven't heard all the Troubled Minds episodes. Go back a couple years and pick one out of the ether. Play it. Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast, completely free, and you do help the show. All right, let's GTFO. It goes exactly like this. Wait, how's it go? Be sure, be strong, be true. I legitimately forgot. Thank you for listening.
I was going
to from our Troubled Minds to yours. Have a great night. I like to mix it up, right? It's kind of like Legos at the end. And if I don't have a prompt from one thing into the other, my brain gets all jelly. All right, I'm out of here. I'm going for a walk. I'll catch you guys a little bit later. Have a fantastic night. Thanks for being you. Always a pleasure.